here to all of you. I hope to get more connected with you as time goes on with my local Marylanders, and look forward to learning more from you about what your individual experiences are with disability and services and how you all relate to everything. So I became a financial planner after spending time as a assistant in a group home. And I spent my time living with 4 adults with intellectual disabilities and spent time around advocacy conferences and heard how frustrated families were about not understanding or being able to find resources for their families. I decided that not enough people were doing the work of educating themselves on just the laws and financial steps that families can take, and decided to dig in to financial planning as a scope of practice for myself, and framed it towards the families that I was working with in the group home I spent time in. I joined Andrew Comero at Planning Across the Spectrum when I saw that his firm was designed in a way to promote independence for the individual with autism, with other disabilities, in a way that I didn't see before. So that's a little bit about me and a bit about how I found my work. And now let's get into it. So what are we going to cover today? We are going to attempt to approach each of the different life stages that people go through. And each one has its own planning objective and resources that are available to people. And it's important to realize that in each stage that there's a different launching pad for different money skills and independence. We try to make sure that everybody knows that no matter what the needs and what the capabilities are of our children and adults who have intellectual disability or other disabilities, that they're able to be involved in some of the aspects of their planning, and we hope to include all of them in what they're going through. And we will discuss different financial opportunities available to these families and these individuals. All right, so a good care team always includes a financial planner. And that's because planners, hopefully planners that know the local area, local resources, can actually dig into the numbers and see what is possible for your family and what makes sense, and try and make things work. We're all trying to solve for your family's greatest independence and greatest potential. And working with a financial planner is one way to one way to support the family in making these big decisions for your loved one or yourself. So here we go. So infant and childhood. So this is the initial phase where some families are lucky to know when they're having a baby that baby is going to come with some special planning. So at this stage, your objective, and I'd love to hear if we can from the audience how many people are in this life stage. If that's not possible, then I completely understand. but this is the life stage where you're gathering your network of support, that you are starting to learn this new community that you'll be living with for the rest of your life as a parent. And you're trying to gather up as much resources as you can about the potential needs of your child. Everything that you will learn and read will not apply to your family and child, but gathering a support network is really the most important thing, to know that who are the people around you who can give you um, love and support emotionally, mentally, who can help pick up some of the research, who can help pick up some of the dinners, and making sure that that's your primary focus. Um, you'll be preparing in early childhood for early intervention and for making sure that your child is on track to enter whatever education system that they might be able to go to once they're older. And you'll start to request childhood waivers when they apply to you. So a waiver, and I'm going to be brief about this, is a Medicaid program that allows children and adults at different stages to be eligible for certain care and assistance. There are different waivers in different stages of your child's life. So what they will be eligible for when they're born is going to be different than what they are eligible later in life. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But the waivers are really state funded and locally funded programs that enable your child to have more participation in daily living with their peers, and making sure that they have access to certain healthcare and other programming that don't come out of your pocket but are state funded. There are there's books we could write about waivers, and I'd love to kind of touch base on those later, but that's about as deep. I'll get into them right now. Just know that there are some childhood waivers and then there are some adult waivers, and that it's important to realize that what's available now is not necessarily the only thing that will be available in the future. Some families are eligible for Social Security when their child is born based on low income. So determine whether or not that's your family and apply as soon as you can to get that financial assistance. And learn, play, and grow with your child. This is an exciting time. This is a child. This is exciting, and you will learn very much about who they are and what they need, as much as anyone else. And it's important to seek support when you need it and when you're in over your head, and start saving for what might be in the child's life. It's why we sometimes find that people are afraid to save for the future, but there's there's something else to be said for not imagining what can be, and what the what ifs of what if your child can um, go to college and have a exciting social life and um, participate in their community to the fullest potential. You want to make sure that you're designing that plan when they're very young, so that you are prepared when what if that happens? What if that joyful thing happens? So in primary education, your children where you will learn about the special education process. You'll learn about what's available to them, and you'll start to begin to hopefully develop your child's financial literacy. Occasionally, you'll have to decide whether the public school in your area is the best fit for your child, or if there's another resource that's available in the local area that would be a better fit. Of course, that includes financial planning. Sometimes when something might come out of pocket, a lot of the time, if a local school is not the best fit or isn't meeting your child's needs, there will be some state funding. If really truly that school is not the best fit, the school should be able to support a transition to a better fit school. This it comes with the advocacy of yourself, with an education advocate sometimes, and make sure you know the resources there as well. Education advocates are people who make it their business to know exactly what the laws are of the area of education and support, what's needed in each school district, and will know exactly how to advocate for your child. And for you as a family. And to know sometimes when this is really the best fit for your child, and just how to push for the best supports available. Um, Always seek out mental health support for yourself and for your child when you notice that there's a strain. Mental health support is certainly not something to be afraid of. And always, always, always do what you can to make sure that you and your family is able to cope with any stress and strain, so that you're able to live well together, and grow as a family as much as possible. So this is again a little bit of basics. I'm going really fast. The IEP is the education programming that your school will put together. The individualized education program is best when it's student driven, when the student's special interests and really interests and skills are recognized and promoted for what they are, and that you're not just looking at what are the educational objectives, but where can this child grow and where can they develop their skill sets to be more and more independent as much as possible. Of course, goals have to be realistic and measurable, and accommodations usually need to take place so that the child can reach the goals in a way that is appropriate for them. But again, we highly recommend that there, as much as you can, enter into the planning your child's interests, skills, and hobbies to make sure that it's actually something that they want to be working towards as a student. Um, So one thing that is important to introduce to your own parenting and try and introduce into the school's parenting, not parenting, but programming is money management. So money management is not typically added into a curriculum for a child with an intellectual disability because a lot of the focus is on functioning as an individual in a classroom and being safe and being with peers and interacting in that way. That's the primary focus of a lot of, especially kids with um, autism or other behavioral challenges. It's just having that kid sit in a room with its peers and making sure that they're safe. We still think that money management is an important skill set to learn. And I'm going to skip over this quote, but a couple ways to teach money management in the younger ages is use real coins. So I don't know if you've ever used play money, but play money does not smell, taste. I mean, I don't want to put money in my mouth, but some people do, and it's not going to be the same as pretend money. And you want as much as possible to have real life learned experience with your children who might process one thing as one thing and another as another. So start with the real thing. Don't pretend that this dollar from the Monopoly box is the same dollar as the one that you take out of your wallet. We aren't using cash all that much anymore, but just um, we do recommend that people use real coins, real dollars to get that concept of money. And a couple things that you could do is just count money. Another thing you can do is just identify money. In this early stage of learning, whether it be in early education or later in life when the child's older and has the concept of counting, when they have the concept of identification of um, different pieces of information. Um, it's really important to get that introduced so that they can start having a base of what it means to have money and have it attributed to the things that you have in your home. Um, Another item that can be used in teaching money skills is an allowance, giving children the choice and ability to um, choose what they are able to bring into their home, whether it be candy or a toy, recognizing that different things cost different amounts of money and that sometimes it means saving longer and waiting for something that they really care about. Allowances, not something I grew up with, but something I really learned to appreciate as it comes to teaching children greater independence and greater awareness of um, what money skills could be. Playing games. This game is called Allowance. It, it's encouraged to play different games that include money in it. This one particularly uh, more looks like real real dollars and cents, um, and just using games to build on skills that are being learned in real life can be really helpful and build a connection between real life and fun. And this tip I really appreciate is keep it consistent. If for children who really need a set schedule, pick the day of the week, pick the day of the month, and play the game more than once. Make sure that it's something, especially if it's if there's a learning component, make sure that it's put into your daily practice of living together and teaching each other. Um, Money exchange. So this is another really fun one. Just teach your child how to pay for things and encourage them to do that sometimes, whether it be in play or at the store, giving them money to know what to do when you're at the cash register. So when we teach little children this skill set and we teach them how to be involved in the social aspect of money and purchasing things, it lasts longer it's a true skill set that can be learned and developed for later in life. Some people will not learn this skill set in childhood and will have to learn it for the first time when they're um, independent or need to come into their own as adults. And I would just encourage you as families to um, teach this as your family is developing and growing and having fun with it. So we're now onto the high school age. So there's a lot of different things that happen in high school that are new and different than in elementary school age. So high school, where we really want to see that you're encouraging special interests to develop into potential future employment skill sets. So one thing that we know with our folks who have autism is that sometimes special interests are not always promoted for what they truly are, which are like intense, really interesting things that people really care about that maybe not be cared by a lot of other people, but are actually a rich, lived internal life that can be translated to some other community that they could be a part of in the future. So if you consider the special interests as um, a skill set, then just translate that as much as you can to what they could potentially be doing as adults in the future. It's this time of life when you should be within your IEP or within your education program exploring what work might look like for your young adult, young child, older child. And this is really a chance for them to not just find a job, bussing tables, doing food service or um, business management, like paper management and various different things. It could really be a truly fulfilling process of finding that one thing that they truly care about and finding ways to incorporate that into their future work life. We're talking to a couple and their 30-year-old son who is really into um, movies and DVDs and has actually created DVDs in the past, has done some drafting of sketches, and um, he would not do well in a retail setting, but he could really do well in a theater or in writing scripts and trying to sell them to friends and family and beyond. So think about the different programs that your child could use to hone in their skills. University coursework is certainly one for available to some people. It could be available to more people than you'd imagine. Trade schools are certainly a possibility for people who are on the slower track and or have an intense interest and don't really want to learn all of the history and science that are required at a undergraduate program. A transition program also could be beneficial to someone who's not necessarily ready for further education, but might need some more skill sets in social skills management. Transition programming could be really helpful. So that's really high school age. And at that point, again, the IEP and the 504, the two education planning entities, documents that are legislated, and just make sure that you're focusing on your child's interests, and that program really is required to have transition within its documentation. So if you're finding as your child is getting older into high school, you're not finding that language as to employment or graduation, like not graduation, but beyond graduation, you should really be having a conversation with your support team at the school to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to have next steps in place for your child. And I've said this before, but if you can imagine, special interests are a big thing with us, and making sure that you're encouraging your child to be who they are and not who they can fit into a role at Costco or various different places. Of course, if that's their interest, go for it. But there are so many different ways you can be creative with your child's employment and future life that we would want you to consider before finding those other workplaces. So when you're at home and you encourage your child for special interests, just try and engage them as much as you can. It might not be your interest. Try and find somebody else who enjoys that and connect your child to that person and take them to a science museum if that's where they want to spend their time. Interact as much as possible with your child on what motivates them. And again, find those people in their life, get them out of the house and get them engaged in a volunteer opportunity or a internship of some kind, and find those people who do really want to hear the 2-hour conversation about whatever it is that they would like to talk your ear off about. Truly, this is one of the biggest things that we could recommend to our families. And I'm gonna skip over a couple of things here. Setting up a bank account. So we do recommend that people set up a bank account with their young person. High school is a good age for a bank account. Earlier is fine too. It's a good opportunity to teach children about what saving. It's a good opportunity for them to learn about, again, like waiting for things that you want and And it's also just a good practice to get them comfortable in where to go if you need money, and to get them comfortable with the people at the bank. They might not be managing things the traditional way and like we have in the past, but a lot of the time when if a lot of the time the need will be there, and we want them to be comfortable with it through childhood and adulthood. Um, we recommend that setting up a bank account that your child is participatory in that, that you can call ahead to see when a quiet time is, that your child would be comfortable being there, prepare them for it and let them know what to expect. And just give them opportunities to be involved as much as possible. Separate out their money to see what they're going to keep, they're going to give away, what they're going to give to the bank, and choose online banks that you can have access to from home. Look for banks that don't charge fees. I'm going backwards. Sorry, guys, if you're following along on this slide. And make sure that you choose a bank that operates outside of normal business hours, because that's just an easier way to get what you need done. The low fees is a big one because low or no fees, because your child will likely be low income or could be low income and receiving benefits. And we don't ever want someone who is low income and receiving benefits to have any kind of penalty for a low balance. It just isn't right, in our opinion, for that ever to be a consideration for the bank to take $2 a month. It's not worth it to you, even to be banked at that point. So find a bank that does not charge monthly, that doesn't charge for low balances, and do what you can to protect those savings that your child is developing. Charity is a good way to encourage empathy and support of a local community. If that's something that you believe in and want your child to believe in, then certainly in the early education of your child, have them involved in picking out the charity that they support. A lot of the time we see that animals are a fun way to have children support the things that they care about. I remember getting a goat at one point for a present for somebody, and that was super fun. So at 18 is a big transition point in our families. The biggest one is because that's when they are eligible for SSI if they are considered disabled. Social Security will be eligible for them on their own income and assets. So once they turn 18, they're no longer looking at the parents' assets and income anymore. They're just looking at at your child, your adult child. And there will be several other pieces that come into play, and it'll be a whole big wave. And it's just important to be prepared before 18, and to know what your child will be eligible for. So we encourage you to apply for whatever adult waiver supports your child might be eligible for. They might not be automatic. A lot of the time, there's a wait period of when benefits are eligible for being received for someone who's newly 18 and doesn't have a crisis happening in their lives. But whenever it's newly 18 or 21, it but we want to make sure that people are applying for anything that they might be eligible for. This is also with Social Security. One thing that we encourage families to do is create a rental agreement. The reason being is I know that it's really not ideal that Social Security looks at that as a requirement, but they do. Social Security will reduce benefits if you're not charging your child rent. And so a simple way to do that is just create an agreement with your child, submit it to the Social Security Administration, and they will see that there's an agreement in place. Depending on who your representative is how detailed the agreement has to be. Oftentimes we just say pick a dollar amount that sounds reasonable. It's fair market rent, but it's so gray of an area. There's really no definition of what that is. And so picking a dollar amount, typically around $400 to $500 a month, even if it's in the DC area, that might still cut it for Social Security Administration. So they just want to see that the child is contributing to their own home and food, because that's what Social Security is typically supporting with SSI. If they don't see that agreement in place, they will reduce the financial benefit that is given to the child, the adult at that point. And so that's just something you have to be aware of with SSI. Continue to nurture special interests. Don't hesitate to encourage employment. Employment does not reduce benefits until they are earning above $1,300 a month. And so that's just important to consider, that if your child is interested in working and can find some work, there are certainly a lot of things that can be done prior to any kind of reduction in benefit. And certainly if you want to talk that through or have an idea, you know where to find me. Don't also continue to teach financial literacy as needed, and get your child involved in as much of their own planning as possible. Apply for a credit card and have them build a credit history. In the future, if they have to live on their own, they will need credit to rent an apartment. And so just having a credit card open in their name and paying something monthly like Netflix account, paying it off every month, is a good way to build that credit history and make sure that they're eligible for living on their own if that's the path that they take, and highly recommended. If your child will be on SSI, now's a good time to make sure that the Enable account is open and that you're moving money to fund an Enable account, either with your savings or with theirs. And the Able will be a way to have a lot of people become eligible for SSI if they have any assets in their name. So once the money is put in an Able, if they are determined as having a disability in the eyes of Social Security Administration, their application should be good to go. So just be aware that the Able is a good tool for eligibility of Social Security and for Medicaid as well. And that's you are limited to the 15,000 a year. So just be aware of what you're limited to giving into that at that time. Again, saving is important to teach discipline, set goals. And I'm going to skip ahead here, a couple of slides here. We've talked a little bit about saving already. Using a tracking device for saving is a good tool for folks who want to see and gets them used to their budget. So tracking each month on a chart to show what they have and what they're looking for is a good motivational tool that some people really enjoy. Writing checks. So if people are going to be living alone in their own apartment, writing a check is important to know how to pay, whether or not they have a representative helping them with bills. It's always a good tool to show how to manage a checkbook. This is one of the biggest things that we can teach our folks is to keep a ledger of spending, and using these fun checks to make sure that they're connecting with what they're spending can really help. I'm gonna skip ahead here. Get them involved in paying their own bills, and let them know what they're earning. Look at their explanation of benefits for their medical insurance. There's a lot of things that we could go into, and I'm going to skip ahead because there's just a lot more we can get into. Early adulthood, we want to prioritize housing. Review your local options for independent living and for supported homes and home ownership. Apply to HUD, the HUD's programming options for reduced required rent, so that your child can keep as much of their income as possible, and or use a roommate system, people that you know that your child knows, and try living together in that situation. And review the waiver lists and prioritize what will be most supportive and least restrictive for the long term. I think housing is probably one of the biggest questions of families, and that will continue to be the case. And just know that there are, I've seen a lot more progress of more interesting housing solutions in the past couple years than I have in the past. And just getting involved in what's available way before it's needed. Take a look at what they could possibly do, could get you prepared and them prepared for when that shift is needed. Freeze credit and continue to monitor it prior to and while looking at homes. And confirm your estate plan to make sure that it reflects the future needs of your child. Again, those needs might change. When you design your estate plan and when your child was young, when they were in high school, it might be very different to what you see them doing independently in early adulthood. Early adulthood could be anywhere between 22 and 35. And your 35-year-old may be doing a lot more than you expected them to when they graduated high school. Your 35-year-old might need more help than you thought they would when they graduated high school. So just make sure that you're reviewing what you have in place for them, and that that's still the best fit for your family and for your intentions. So the whole picture, I could go on and on. We want to make sure that as you develop that you have care teams in place to support your family's needs. A care team includes financial professionals, it includes mental health professionals, it includes team members and coaches. Anybody who is around your family who knows one piece of your life and who can support your child in whatever area of life that they fit into. It's important to make sure that caregivers are planning for their own financial future. That's you, and that your healthy balance between saving for yourself and for caring for others is maintained. And preparation by caregivers leads to more financial independence for the dependents. So That's just the image of when the oxygen falls in the airplane. You have to make sure that you're covering you have your mask on first before you can help somebody else. Um, it's essential in our planning, and want to just touch on that briefly. Um, and we as financial planners look at today's finances, preparing for the unexpected, and preparing for the future, which is retirement, and then eventually for the needs of your family beyond you. So I'm going to skip a couple things here. But preparing for the future, and this is for your child as well. So when they're in their middle ages, we're looking at making sure that they're contributing to whatever retirement they're eligible for, if that's something that they're able to do. Now, some people on Medicaid programming have restrictions on what they can save for their own retirement. But there are many people who are eligible to contribute to their own retirement. And this is where unique look at your own personal experience and life is important. Make sure that you're not living on the beliefs of what you heard in the past applies to your family now. You do want to make sure that you're looking at what their needs are now and what they can grow into independent wise, and what was important to them in early adulthood might not be as important in late adulthood. That was a lot to say. You want to make sure that you're planning for the reality that you have, and not based on past or fears of the future. So this is I'm going to skip ahead more, and I'm actually going to take a pause and take questions, because we have gone through a lot, and I want to make sure that I touch on anything that we've gone through, and can take on anything that's gone through. Okay, so how do you calculate a child's rent? Do you need to sign a contract with an adult child if they have a lower SSI income? So rent, again, is calculated based on what the Social Security agent, support person, asks of you. So there's a couple ways to do it. There's the idea of just submitting. He or she is going to pay $400 a month, see what they say. If they need to see statements of mortgages and various different things, then you get more into the detail of what does it cost to live in the home, and what might be the best actual calculation. So usually it's a matter of giving a low estimate, or like if $400 sounds a lot to where you live, if you're living in a smaller home and you wouldn't ever consider taking $400 for rent, then certainly that's not appropriate for you. But if you're again living in the city or near DC or Baltimore, you might consider a different basis of what it would cost to rent out the room. And Social Security can help you with that, but it doesn't always have to be a signed agreement. Sometimes it does. That's not a clear answer, because the SSA does not operate clearly. It's really what the person working with you is comfortable with. Unfortunately, it's not a very good answer. I'm sorry. What is the HUD? How do we apply for this? So HUD is the federal programming of housing assistance. So there are and typically it kind of is thought of as Section 8. It's low income housing, and there's a cap to how much people in the program are allowed to be charged for rent, which protects the benefits that they're receiving. The cap is usually 30% of the median income of the county, which could be quite high. So a lot of our folks who have lower income will qualify for HUD in our area. And I would highly recommend, if they're going to be living in an apartment or on their own, that they apply for HUD in early adulthood and late adulthood. I think it makes sense to reduce the impact of rent on their ability to hold cash and to pay for their other needs. Does Maryland Medicaid include long-term care services? So there are different programs, and some will, some won't. I can have a longer conversation about that, but I would have to dig into the actual program, unfortunately. And a lot of the time, so long-term care services, that it would never cover rent. The Medicaid program would never cover rent or housing. It would cover support needs, respite care, nursing, different things like that. But to a different extent based on what the actual need is. And that's definitely, very specific to what, I'm sorry, I won't get into much more than that, but that's a little bit about the Medicaid programming. I'm going to move on a little bit and jump into questions again. We have 10. No, we have longer, but I'm going to just keep moving along here. And I'm going to try and, okay, I'm going to skip a good part of ahead because my slides are a little bit more than I would like to go over today. So in middle age, you will want your child to review for eligibility for Ssdi. Now, Ssdi is different than SSI in many, many ways. There are two different programs that I'm including in the scope of Ssdi. There's first, just them working and getting a benefit for their working life. So if your child is moving towards independence and is working pretty well, and they have significant quarters of work experience that they've paid into Social Security, basically a number of years, like between 4 and 10 years of work as a young person, they could be eligible for Ssdi. And once that happens, their Ssdi benefit is no longer restricted by the assets that they hold, so they can start saving more money. Now, if you want the person to still be eligible for Medicaid services, you still have to be cautious about the assets that are being held in their name. But Ssdi won't go away if they have too much money in the bank, basically, is what is happening here. Once the young person is eligible for Ssdi, young or older, they will qualify for Medicare after 2 years, and then Medicare will take over as their primary health insurance provider Medicaid will still be available as health insurance, but Medicare becomes primary. And they will be able to be on Medicare for the rest of their life. One scenario that we have is a young person uses benefits to launch into adulthood. They get a great job that they love and that they're respected at. They lose eligibility for SSDI and SSI, but they had Medicare. They will never lose Medicare. They can keep Medicare for the rest of their life. There's a 5-year waiting window of when they could stop receiving Medicare for free. But then they would pay the premiums just like any other retiree. And so health insurance will never be lost once someone is on SSDI and Medicare. So this is just that one thing that people don't always think about because they're concerned about Medicaid. Medicare is often a benefit that most people get onto later in life because either they worked and are eligible for it, or because they had a disability in childhood before 22 and their parents worked and retired or passed away. So that's the second piece, is the disabled adult child benefit operates in the same way as SSDI does. And there's not an asset limit, and they become eligible for Medicare after 2 years. So once SSDI happens, there's a lot of review that can happen. Once again, like if you retire and your child is receiving disability benefits and they had a disability prior to age 22, they will start receiving half of your retirement benefits. Once you pass away, they will receive 75% of your retirement benefits. And it's a good time to review your estate plan again to see if what their lived experience and their benefit resources available to them are actually in need of protection in the same way that they were when they were in high school and the same way that they were when they were in young adulthood. It's just kind of a different ball game. So if they're not using the waiver programs and they don't care to become eligible for the waiver programs, if they were never designed for them anyway, because they're kind of more independent anyway, it's really important to just consider, well, what does it look like to just not worry about that and start saving like everybody else? So this again is for someone who's more independent, who doesn't need the care needs, and is working and is stable and has the support systems to fall back on outside of the benefit programs of family and healthcare and everything else. It's a really cool thing we get to do as planners, is to talk to people in that stage. And it is a potential for really, really powerful work. So I encourage you to consider that as a child develops and grows into independence. So older life, I will consider, so the waivers that are available to adults with disabilities aren't always available to as many people as are eligible. When people become older and are now 65 plus, they would be eligible for the elderly benefits. And so it's another checking point when your care support team of your child or your sibling can look again and see, is there something that they didn't, or they weren't eligible for whatever reason, that they're now eligible for because they're elderly. It's always important to check to see if they're, not that the rules have changed, but that now they're eligible for a different program that does get them the needs that they have. Don't forget to review the options and review for whether or not their needs are being met where they are right now. Again, review estate planning towards the end of life, even for your child. So when we're looking at elderly planning, we also want to look at what their estate might look like, and if they've set up their planning to leave anything behind. So that wouldn't necessarily come into play if they have a trust, and it wouldn't necessarily come into play with a number of things. But when we get into older life and we start seeing the potential of trusts going back to the state for first party trusts and for ABLE accounts, technically the ABLE is still eligible to go back to the Medicaid programming, or the option is there. They want to kind of start doing more of a spending plan to make sure that either they're spending their money and it's not going back to the government if that's a desire of yours, or just if there's other options available to them. We touched on this. So supplemental security income is SSI, and Ssdi is the Social Security Disability Insurance. Social Security Disability Insurance is what someone is eligible for based on a working life, and SSI is something that someone is eligible for because of their disability determination only. And they have that limited income and resource requirement. I'm going to pause again and see. Can 22 years disability adult child get parents half of full retirement income? So if the child had a disability prior to 22, yes. If the individual's parents are collecting Social Security benefits, the child would be eligible for the disabled adult child benefit. There's a couple conditions. Number one, you have to notify Social Security that you have a disabled adult child. They have to be, again, that age requirement, they have to be under 22 when their disability was acquired, or when it was determined to be a disability. For a lot of folks, there's a birth designation. And the last thing I needed to say about that was they have to, oh man, I lost my train of thought. It's the full retirement income. So the full retirement age benefit, it doesn't go up like someone who waits to take the benefit at 70. It would stop at that, at the full retirement age, accruing any kind of benefit. And there was one other point I wanted to make. I'm sorry that I can't pull it out of my brain right now. Yeah. So they need to have received a disability determination from SSI, regardless of whether they have had SSI or not. So this is another thing that's interesting, is that they don't need to have applied for SSI to be eligible for the disabled adult child benefit. A lot of people wait to apply for benefits until they feel like they truly need it. And as long as there's a medical determination made from the Social Security, the disabled adult child benefit would still be eligible. So that's just something to consider. This is the last part. So they could never, there's an earning limitation on the disabled adult child benefit. So if the child ever received substantial gainful activity, employment, so above the 1310 a month that they can earn on a paycheck, it technically disallows them from receiving the disabled adult child benefit. So just something to be aware of. When they are over 22 years and there is an acquired disability, there is nothing for them for disabled adult child benefit. Correct. If they have an acquired disability after 22. The disabled adult child benefit only applies to individuals who have a disability when they were a child or under 22. They can be eligible for Ssdi on their own work record, but not their parents' work record. Okay. So I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to skip ahead. So ABLE, I touched briefly on ABLE. We talk a lot about ABLEs in our company. We believe in people using the ABLE for what they're designed for. Oftentimes that means filtering money into an ABLE when you're applying for benefits. And it also means moving money from accounts to make sure that you're not going over asset limitations. And they are 100% designed to protect people from losing benefits when they have too much money. They are not trusts. They don't operate the same way. They are not taxed the same way as a trust. And they will be in the person with a disability's name as opposed to their parents or their trustee. They have full discretion of the account if they are able to do that for themselves. So it is a tool that we encourage people to use for their own independence, more so than the trust would ever be. The way that I'm saying that, so I want to clarify that. There are reasons to have both accounts. So a ABLE can only receive $15,000 a year and is not an appropriate estate planning tool if anything being left to a child is more than $15,000. But for a smaller estate, it could be the estate planning tool that is given if you believe that the child would be able to manage the ABLE account or they have support system to do it for them. The asset, it is an investable account, and any growth within the account is tax-free. There's no tax coming out of the ABLE account, and it does not impact benefits or eligibility for benefits at all. Right. So benefits that it would protect are SSI, SNAP, and Medicaid. And the expenses that come out of the ABLE are called qualified disability expenses. And pretty much anything qualifies as a qualified disability expense. The story I like to tell that does not qualify is basically if you're giving a gift of a car to a friend, that is not a qualified disability expense. If you are depleting your assets for someone else, that is not a qualified disability expense. If you're spending the whole account value on the casino, that is not a qualified disability expense. People are allowed to give gifts out of the 529 to friends and family. It is important to know that the Social Security Administration and Medicaid understand that people have the need to give gifts to participate in the social life of their family and friends. Truly anything that would benefit a person's lived experience in the world is a qualified disability expense, and would not be taxed on the distribution. That's pretty broad. We've not seen any kind of legislation or argument against disability expenses. And then, so who is eligible? So this is another age that you have to be mindful of. A disability can occur prior to, so 26. The onset is 26 or younger. I believe it's the 26th birthday. So there is legislation discussing whether or not that can be extended. Again, the benefits that it would protect are SSI, Medicaid, and SNAP. A lot of people, when they get to the middle age, are eligible for Ssdi and Medicare. And so when we're looking at the ABLE, we try and have the conversation of what are you really protecting? We look at the ABLE as a spending account, as a savings vehicle, and a way to protect benefits. But the benefits that someone would be eligible to receive and that they are receiving is as important as in the context of their life. And I'm not being super clear on that, but the ABLE is a tool beyond that as a savings vehicle. There might be other savings vehicles that they would be eligible for at that time. Again, like 401k might be eligible for and other retirement accounts. So it's just, it's great for what it does. And it's a good tool for saving at a tax advantage way. If we're looking at, so I would encourage people to consider ABLEs as part of their planning, certainly. And then keep moving along here. And so this is a different gifting strategy. So if UTMAs and UGMAs are accounts set up for minor children, and we find that the ABLE is a tool that grows tax-free. Assets are not considered childs for federal financial aid calculation. With an UTMA and UGMA, they are. So just be aware at the age of majority in the state of Maryland, it's 21. Technically, it would be considered their asset and would need to be either put into an ABLE or a trust at that point. And we consider that the ABLE just might be easier way to go. The 529 A is what is the other name for the ABLE account. So a couple of words on the special needs trust, and then I'll go into the rest of the questions. I know this has been super long, so thank you for being with me. Special needs trusts are designed by someone to protect, again, from losing benefits. When there are several different types of first party trust is, again, for the individual themselves. If they have assets in their name and they want to save it into a protected entity of the trust, they set it up and then they have a trustee manage it for them. They can set up a trust if they're earning too much and need to put it away. Usually we don't. There are so many reasons why you can plan for other things. A first party trust often is based on a settlement agreement for an accident, and we try our best to find other ways to set up estate plans. We, as in the team that talks to people about the planning, we work with attorneys to actually design the estate plan. Third party trust is someone else's money. So anytime a parent or a sibling leaves money to the person with the disability, that's a third party trust. The child or the adult with the disability can never add money to their trust, or it becomes a first party trust. And then it is eligible for the state Medicaid refunding, and a whole boatload of drama goes on. So we would always try our best to keep those funds separate. If they have extra money, put it in an ABLE account first and a first party trust second, or just spend it. What else can I say about this? Should always be drafted by a certified attorney. We like to work with certified elder law attorneys or attorneys who specifically work with supplemental needs trusts and special needs trusts, and have recommendations in a couple different parts of the state to work with different attorneys there. And one thing I want to say is trust is very important for people who will be on benefits all their life, and can work in concert with the ABLE account. So a trust can fund an ABLE account every year if that's what the design of the trust is, or if it's the trustee's decision to move money into the ABLE. If we have an individual who's able to spend their own money and able to kind of manage on their own for a good amount of time, funding the ABLE from the trust is a good way to limit the back and forth between trustee and beneficiary if that relationship is tense and toxic, which it can be even sometimes. So funding an ABLE is one way to keep a budget flowing either monthly or annually. It's one way to just give more agency to the person with a disability. And both can be used together. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It should really be both, or one, depending on what the situation is. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly as well. And there are other options to consider with every conversation: insurances, letters of intent, or a family care plan, guardianship power of attorney, and trustees and investments. So these are all parts of the conversation around financial planning and care planning and the lifespan of the needs of the financial life of your loved one. I went through a ton of information, and I am hopefully coming to some other questions. So let me see if we've got anything. I'm gonna stop sharing and just talk here. All right, so I'm not seeing anything to the hosts and panelists in the chat. I'm not seeing any open questions here.
So Liz, we'll just give it 1 second if people want to put something in the chat box.
Sure.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really, really helpful and very comprehensive. And I do want to let
Really
people know
dense. I'm sorry. It was so long. But
that's a
there is
lot
a
of
lot.
information. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do let people know that there are 2 classes coming up the rest this week that address specifically special needs trusts. So please feel free to sign up for those or any other webinars that you received with the email. We do have more coming up for the month of October. So very excited to participate with the Maryland Department of Disabilities campaign this month with these educational workshops. And so I don't see any questions so far, so I think we're good. And with that, I just really like to thank you for taking time to present to us today. This was amazing. Thank everyone who attended today and taking time out of your day to learn this information. Please spread the word and give others the information that you've learned. This is recorded, so it will be posted at some point, and you'll be able to access it at a future date. So with that, we'll end the webinar, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.